Join the movement. Listen to legendary journalist Milton Allimadi talk Sahel states, African leaders, and African youths. Watch the full ad-free reason now, only on www.inevernewtv.com Premium.
What is up with the trend of these 80, 90-year-old men continuing to win elections in Africa and the havoc it causes? Because you see it in organizations, institutions, you see it in the church, where there's that schism in the generation. Younger people get totally turned off. Excuse me. And the older group, they age out. They're so disconnected from what's needed for things to run efficiently.
Yes. It's the ultimate form of corruption. And it's a template that is not new in Africa, in the post-colonial era in Africa. And it started once again in the Congo. After Lumumba was brutally murdered, the West installed Mobutu.
There for a long time, right?
General Mobutu, who essentially was in power. Because even though he didn't become officially president until like 65, he was really the power in 1960. Because through him, they were able to take away the loyalty of Congo's army away from the legitimate leader, Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba. And Mobutu was the commander of the army. And sadly, Lumumba did not know it when he made Mobutu the commander in 1960. Then Mobutu had been recruited in 1958 by the CIA when he had gone to Belgium to so-called study journalism, you see? So at some point it was going to happen, because he was their asset, really. So then you had Mobutu for 37 years. And in that period, he amassed wealth. And it didn't matter that he did not care about what the people of the Congo wanted, you see. So long as he had support of the United States and Belgium, he knew he could be in power for as long as he wanted. Just give them access to resources. And that's it. And then you are forgiven for all the crimes you commit against your own people. At the same time, amassing tremendous wealth. Many reports, and the number that you hear frequently is $5 billion. And, and here's the worst part of it, comrade. If you're going to steal $5 billion, why are you taking it to banks in Switzerland or France and buying palatial mansions in Switzerland or France? I'm not saying steal, but I'm saying if you're going to steal, why not invest it in another African country? Just think about that, And this is what they do consistently, raping from our own people and taking it to build Europe when Europe at the same time historically exploited you, enslaved you, first of all, and then colonized you. And then even right now, through unequal exchange, is stealing from you. Why?
I want to ask you a question, man. So when I study history and see a lot of these leaders, a lot of them attended university in the States.
Thank you.
They attended university in Europe.
Yes.
Now, this is just a theory, but do they look down on their own people when they're abroad? Like they don't see them on the same level? And does that aid? Because I'm not going to say like they have a full European mindset, but I think going to school abroad and coming back, they look down on their people. They don't have that same connection and love. So it's easier to exploit, steal, and treat them that way.
Okay, so that explains for some of them, of course, but not all of them. Because let's remember, Kwame Nkrumah went to an HBCU, Lincoln University.
MLK, right?
And then University of Pennsylvania. And then he went to London and studied more there before going back, you see? Agostinho Neto, who became the leader of the liberation struggle in Angola, right? Leading the MPLA, right? He studied in Portugal, right? The belly of the beast, the colonial beast. But, became even much more pro-Africa, much more anti-colonial, much more radicalized right? The same thing with Amilcar Cabral, one of the most brilliant African revolutionaries. He studied same thing in Portugal. Such a brilliant mind that the dean of the university where he studied had him tutor his kids. A European dean having an African tutor his own children. Think about that. You must be brilliant, right? And just like to teach. He used to go to the impoverished neighborhoods in Lisbon, in Portugal, just to teach, just like Walter Rodney. Remember how Rodney used to like to go and commune with, Rasta sisters and brothers in Jamaica, away from the ivory tower? Cabral was the same thing like this. So that is an aspect, but it does not explain completely. But of course, there are those like Senghor, in Senegal, like Houphouët-Boigny in Ivory Coast, who did study in France and who claimed they were, in as much words, more French than the French themselves. You see? So you do have those as well. And those were the ones who were much more closely connected to France. And those were the ones that imperialists used to undermine Kwame Nkrumah. They turned people like that against Nkrumah, and they basically divided the movement to form a United States of Africa into two camps. They call it the so-called Monrovia and Casablanca group. And Nkrumah, of course, was identified with the Casablanca, who were saying, we need a United States of Africa now. And the other groups were saying, oh, let's do it gradually over a long period of time. And of course, that's not possible, because the longer it takes, the more you become accustomed to having your individual countries with individual names, with your own national anthem, your own flag, your own state house, being called Excellency, Excellency. Who wants to give that up later, And that's why Nkrumah said, if we don't do it now, it's going to be difficult. But ironically, we're coming back full circle, because if you follow social media conversations, you see more and more young Africans talking about borderless Africa, because they don't want to live under the kind of subjugation that these very senior and many senile leaders have caused them to suffer. Just think about it. And this is something that is not talked about enough. It is the ultimate in failure to see Africans trying to get across the Mediterranean, to run back to the seat of imperialism, and hundreds die every year trying to cross the rough seas in these rickety outfits. Think about that. So I'm always in my messaging encouraging young people, if it needs for you to risk your life, you're better off risking your life trying to change the government in your own country than to drown. And then you drown, and then once you get to Europe, what are you going to be doing? Cleaning toilets, cleaning the streets, working in kitchens, working in those farms in southern Italy. When those countries are becoming wealthy because of resources from your country. So that's why I am very encouraged when I see young people coming out on the streets and making all these demands. They must end up running these countries. We don't need these 80-year-olds. We need Africans who come there and say, you know what? We know the key to building wealth in Africa. It's very simple. Control what belongs to you. Once you control that, they still need it. Who does not need cobalt? Who does not need coltan? Who does not need copper? Who does not need uranium? They need all these resources. Who does not need the natural gas? Who does not need the petroleum? They still need it because the economies are fueled in a certain industrial way. So what we're saying is that so long as they continue to need it, make sure that they pay you what you deserve. How can France benefit from all the uranium from Niger? And if you read the papers, you find the New York Times referring to Niger as a dirt poor country. That's nonsense. There's no poor country in Africa. Every African country is wealthy. They are impoverished. There's a difference between being poor and impoverished, right? Impoverished because they're taking your resources literally for free and then forcing you to buy what they make with your resources for inflated prices. And then, of course, you can't afford it because you're selling and you're getting only this amount of money. And you're buying and you have to pay this amount. So what do? You borrow money. And that is why Africa now collectively has a debt of more than $1 trillion. Think about that.